Hello and welcome to Hacks, where we try to simplify cybersecurity. Welcome to part 2 of Hack to Learn Environment Setup. So, what's an environment? Well, in order to hack into things, in order to scan things, in order to do sort of anything cybersecurity related that isn't reporting, you need an environment, you need tools, you need a way to interact with the targets that you're attacking. And this comes in the form of usually an operating system. Now you can install the tools on your base if you're using Windows or Linux or Mac for that matter. You can use something like Homebrew and install them that way. And you can install them on your base, but the problems that arise with that is some clients may want you to destroy all data around the engagement once you're done. And if you've invested a lot of time in configuring your base OS, the last thing you're going to want to do is delete it. So the best method, in my opinion, of setting up an environment is to use what's called a virtual machine. And a virtual machine is something that runs on top of your operating system. You need software to run it called a hypervisor. There are different ones of these. There's Hyper-V from Microsoft. There's VirtualBox from Oracle. There's VMware. There's ESXi. There's a lot of different ones. But for the purposes of this, we're going to be using VirtualBox. And what Hypervisor does is it allows you to run a guest operating system on top of your native operating system. So once you've got your hypervisor installed, you can then download and install other operating systems. So you can be running Windows on your base, but then you also have Linux running in a virtual environment where you can install all your tools. Furthermore, you can then clone that box. So once you've configured it to your liking, you've got all the updates installed. Once you're assigned on an engagement or want to hack one of your targets, you can then clone that virtual machine exactly how it is, log into the newly cloned machine, do all your hacking, and then destroy it, erasing all evidence to some extent of that instance, which again can be very handy on certain client engagements where the data is of a certain confidentiality level where it needs to be destroyed before you leave site or once the engagement is complete. So with that said, we're going to look into a number of options. Now I said that you can use VMware or there's Hyper-V, but for the purposes of this one, we're going to use VirtualBox. And you can find VirtualBox by just Googling it or go into virtualbox.org. And then all you have to do is click the download button and it will start a download in your browser and save it to your downloads directory. So you may get this option here, and you can choose the option based on whichever host you are. So this is going to be your native host, your build. So if you're running Windows, you'll need the Windows hosts one. If you're running OS X, you'll need like Mac OS, you'll need that. And if you're running Linux, you'll need that. So we'll just choose Windows hosts, and then you can see there it started the download. I've already got it downloaded and installed, so I'm just going to cancel that. Now, that's only the hypervisor. What you then need to determine is what operating system you're going to run in your hypervisor. Now, it's great experience to distro hop, as they call it. So you can use Ubuntu 1 week and install all your tools on that. You can use Mint the next week, or Manjaro if you like Arch, or Fedora if you prefer that. So getting experience with different hosts is another benefit of using virtual machines. You can spin up as many as you want, provided you've got the disk space and time to do it. But for penetration testing, there are a number of distributions. There's many, there's things like Black Ubuntu, but the main ones you're going to be looking at are Kali Linux, which I'm sure you've heard about before if you're here. It used to be called Backtrack. And it comes with all the tools that you need pre-installed: Wireshark, Burp Suite, Hydra, John Repo, Matigo, Metasploit, Mmap. And you can get a mobile version for it as well. Kali Linux, I feel, is one of the industry standards. pretty much every pen tester has probably encountered Kali Linux at some point. But you also have Parrot Security. I believe they're currently partnered, or if not endorsed, by Hack the Box, which is a hacker playground, something we'll be covering in my next video. But Parrot, again, very similar to Kali Linux. It's based on Debian, like Kali Linux. You have a variety of desktop options, but I believe the default one is Mate, and it's quite a nice operating system. You also have Backbox, which again is a Debian-based Ubuntu derivative. Comes with a few tools installed. I've tried Backbox, didn't really get along with it, but again, I'm sure if I spent more time on it, I could learn to love it. And then Black Arch is one of your other main ones as well, and it isn't Debian-based, as you can imagine. It's Arch-based, and it has its own repositories. I would say this is definitely more for your advanced users. It's got a lot of tools which you may not find on Kali. Well, you probably can get them on there, but it's not on there by default. But yeah, there's definitely a lot going on. So feel free to Google, the pros and cons of each distribution and which one you should choose. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go with Kali Linux. So in order to get Kali Linux, click on the download page. Again, this may differ from what you see. They may update the website by the time you watch this video, but you should have a number of options. Most cases, you're going to want to choose virtual machines. Bare metal is going to be your native build. It's going to be on your system, bare bones. ARM is going to be for ARM processors. I imagine you're using a CISC processor, complex instruction set rather than reduced instruction set. You've got the mobile version there, you have a cloud, you have a container version, so I believe that's going to be something like using Docker. It will have a Docker image which you can run on your native build, so you'll have Docker installed, you'll download the Docker container and it'll have all your tools on there. Live boot, that's going to be something you write to a USB drive and you boot it up, and it doesn't install directly on your system. It's something you run off USB. It can be a problem with persistent storage unless you're an advanced user and you can go through and configure that. And Windows subsystem for Linux. So this is going to be there is a Kali available through the Windows Store, I believe, or at least in Ubuntu. So for those who don't know, Microsoft Windows does have a Linux subsystem, which is pretty good. It allows you to interact with a Linux distribution via the terminal. I believe you can get desktop environments to that, and then you can RDP to it, or another tool to connect to it. But yeah, for the purposes of this, we are going to go with the recommended virtual machines. And you can see here that you have the option of 64-bit and 32-bit. Now, provided you are using quite a modern operating system, the likelihood is that you're going to need a 64-bit version. However, if you're unsure, what you can do is you can go to your start menu and type in command prompt, and then if you right click command prompt and click run as administrator, you do need elevated privileges. What you can then do is you can then run wmic os get os architecture, all one word, and it should tell you right there that you're using a 64-bit architecture. Ignore system 32, just you're using 64-bit, so you know you don't need 32, you need 64. Then it's up to you to choose your hypervisor. Again, I'm going to be using VirtualBox. It's just what I've always used. I have used VMware before, but I just prefer VirtualBox. So once you've read up and made a decision on it, choose your flavor, and then you can either click the direct download button or the torrent button if you want to leech and then seed the image. And then you see it will start downloading and you'll have this lovely orange icon. Then once you've downloaded it, what you need to do is you need to spin up your virtual hypervisor. And you can see that I've already got Kali installed, but in order to install yours, once it's finished downloading, and it may take a while, you need to go to File and then click Import Appliance. Then you select the source, so it's going to be from your local file system unless you've downloaded it to an external drive. Then you're going to click the folder icon and you're going to browse through to where it's been downloaded. And in my case, it's right there. Then you're going to click open. Set the file path and click next, and now you'll be presented with a bunch of the settings. You won't need to change any of these. I don't think you can change any of them just yet, but just make sure that the installation path is where you need it to be and that you have enough disk space in order to install it. So I'm going to click import, and then it will prompt you to get you to accept a license agreement, because Kali. And then it will do some stuff in the background, and it will say importing virtual disk image, VirtualBox, blah 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 blah. 5 minutes. So I'll pause the video here and come back once it's done.
One eternity later.
And it has finished installing. So as you can see now, I now have 2 virtual machines. Feel free to go through and look at the settings in VirtualBox. There's some really good things that you can set up on here. So for instance, if you go into the advanced settings on the general tab, you can set up a bi-directional clipboard, which means you'll be able to copy and paste even files in some instances, although not always reliable, in between your virtual machine and your native operating system. Very useful if you just want to paste in commands or notes that you've got saved in a document outside of the virtual machine. Then you've got your description there and disk encryption. So if you want to add an extra layer of protection because you've got sensitive information on there, what you can do is you can encrypt the disk so that you need to input a password before it unlocks. Looking at the system, you have your base memory, so this is how much of your actual host memory is being allocated to the virtual machine. So you can see here I've given it about 4 gigabytes, which means 4 gigabytes of my system is going to be reserved for this virtual machine. The same is with the processor as well, so you can see there I've got 8 cores. The green is the safely recommended amount. I've only selected 3 there. I don't think it needs much more unless we're doing cracking, but again, these can be adjusted. You just need to power off the machine and then you'll be able to change them. You've got an acceleration tab and you've got a display tab. Sometimes this can cause issues with 3D acceleration, but should be fine. Remote display, you can enable it to run on a server, but you need to install or download the additional components for VirtualBox, but it will allow you to remote desktop into the virtual machine from a different box, which is very useful if you want to run it on an external host instead of your native machine. So you can always have it on if you're not necessarily for pen testing, but for other machines. Say if you want a web server running on a virtual environment, you could do that and then remote desktop to it. Storage. So here is where you will find your actual hard disk. This is where the operating system is installed. You can see how much is being used. But then we also have the Virtual Guest Edition CD, which is currently inserted into the drive. Very important. I will probably make a separate video on guest editions because it could take quite a while to go through. You've got your audio settings, your network settings. Again, this can be very important, especially if you're setting up other virtual machines on your host to attack. You want them to be in the same network range so that you can reach them. There's some more settings up here that you can go into. Serial ports, USB. Occasionally this can cause issues. So if you're ever setting up a virtual machine and you get a USB issue, just pop into the USB settings and change it from 3 to 1 and you'll be fine. Shared folders, very powerful. You can see here I've got my OneDrive mounted, and that's just so if I have any word lists for password cracking or any other tools on my base, I can access them through here, and it's just like reading and writing to a mount point. And then your user interface settings. And then we can start the virtual machine. That will spawn a new window. See there the VirtualBox menu, and then we're into Grub, which is telling us to select which operating system we want. We just want the Kali GNU license Linux. Nice quick boot there, and then we're on the login page. Now, for Kali Linux, the default credentials for VirtualBox appliances is just Kali, and click login. And then that will load your desktop. We'll have a quick tour around. So first off, you got your desktop environment. You can do all the things in Windows that you want to do. You can change your wallpaper, change your menus, your icons. You've got a taskbar at the top instead of the bottom, which has got your clock, your lock, your power off, your sound, your network, your system process monitor, task manager. You've also got multiple desktops to work on, so you could have home open here, and then you can switch to desktop 2 and it's disappeared, and then desktop 1 there. Very good if you want to quickly move over to a different window and not have people see what you're doing, or if you just have multiple projects that you're working on and you want to switch between them day to day. At the top we've also got a terminal, something which you'll become very familiar with if you're doing penetration testing or hacking. You got your browser, a document reader, your sort of directory file explorer that you'll be used to on Windows. As you can see, there's my OneDrive. And then we have View Desktop, and we also have your sort of start menu, I suppose is the way to do it. There is a good feature in a good feature in Kali where you can go into Kali undercover mode, and what that does is it switches it to Windows. So if you're on a red team engagement and you've broken into somebody's building and you don't want them to be suspicious and you got your laptop open, you can switch to incognito mode and it looks like Windows, but it is still Kali. You still got your terminal, you still got your Nmap, you still got your harvester. All your tools are still there. It's just disguised as Windows, which I love. I generally love it. But then you can switch back to Kali anytime you want. So that's it. That's how to get your environment set up and ready for pen testing. You may encounter issues with guest editions. I do intend to do a video on installing those and setting them up. It's not going to be part of this series. It will be part of a different series called Tricks and Tips. But that's it for me. I hope you liked the video. I hope it's helped you get started on your way to becoming a cybersecurity professional, expert, master hacker. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. Subscribe, leave me a comment, and I will see you next time where we will be looking at legal ways to hacker playgrounds, so to speak. So, see you next time. Kind regards.